Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am here with Kelsa Dickey. She is a money coach and financial guidance and consulting expert. I am so excited to have Kelsa on today. She actually spoke the other day to the Wellpreneur Business Academy students, and the level of expertise and knowledge that Kelsa brings to the table is just unreal. I mean, so many light bulb moments for so many ladies. She's truly able to simplify finances and truly take the stress out of money. So today we're going to dive into a bunch of cool stuff. We're going to talk about budgeting, paying off debt, saving, and really figuring out your financial situation, getting some clarity for you. And today, let me say, Kelsa, she's based in Phoenix, Arizona, and she has clients all over the country. And she's been helping people manage their day-to-day finances for over 10 years. And like I said, today she is going to drop some knowledge bombs for you guys. So this is going to be exciting. So Kelsa, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to get to chat with you and kind of bring some awareness to some of the listeners.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I am just excited to have conversations with people about money.
Yes, I love it. This is such a fun area of expertise because it's something that's super intimidating for so many people. And you just have this beautiful way of simplifying it and really taking that almost masculine edge out of it and just making it really digestible for everyone.
Thank you. You know, I started as a financial advisor and this was, 15 years ago. But at the time, I would go to these meetings with all these other financial advisors, and they were 60-year-old men wearing bow ties and suits and talking about their grandkids. And I remember being at that time like 23 years old and just thinking, I have nothing in common with you. And it was just so hard. I feel like I like to wear bright clothes and, hopefully add sort of a fun element to something that is not seen as fun at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So if you want to share a little bit about your expertise and your experience in this industry and kind of how you got started and a little bit about what you do now.
Yeah. So like I said, I started as a financial advisor. I think my passion for this started way back when I was in middle school, and I saw my mom file bankruptcy. And at the time I didn't know what bankruptcy meant. I didn't really understand the ins and outs of that. I just remember learning from a really young age that money affects your life. And sometimes that's in a good way and sometimes it's in a bad way. And I just knew from an early age that I wanted to help people with money. So I went to school and I got my degree in finance and practiced as a financial advisor. I had a guidance counselor tell me that that's what I should do for a living. And I was all gung-ho about it. I was super excited, thought it was going to be my passion, and kind of hated every minute of it, to be honest. So the part that I realized I really enjoyed was, people coming in and talking to me or asking questions about getting out of debt or coming in and saying, I don't know where my money is going. And the investments and insurance, I really did not enjoy at all. So I was young, though. I was probably 25 and had sort of a quarter life crisis, I call it, and went back to school, got my master's in accounting, and told myself a job is just a job. I don't have to love it. I just need to get a paycheck. Went into corporate accounting. And that's sort of when I think Fiscal Fitness was actually born, because it's really purely started as a hobby. And I always joke that for a really long time, budgeting has been my hobby, which I know sounds weird,
I love it.
But it's just something that I love to do. So, and it happened very naturally. I would just sort of see somebody at work stressed out and I'd say, oh, come over after work. I'll see what I can do. And it got to the point where every day after work and all day on Saturday, I was pretty much sitting around my dining room table helping people. And I thought, what the hell am I doing all day? This is what I was meant to do. But that was a long time ago and nobody was really just doing budgeting. I don't really think there's too many people who just do that now. So it's a pretty unique thing that, kind of had to craft for myself and find my own niche. But my focus now really is on just the day-to-day part of money. So, I'm not a business coach in the sense that those people help create ways of making more money. This is the money you already have coming in. What are we doing with it? Are we making really good decisions with it? Do you feel really confident about those decisions? Do you feel like you have a really solid plan in place and that your money is actually supporting the things you want to do with your life? I think one of the biggest culprits is actually a person who says, well, when I make more money, I'm going to do this. Or when I start my business, or when I get that extra client, this is when I'll start doing things. And I my thing is, let's do it now. You've got something coming in. Let's figure out how to make the most of the money now. And so that's really my focus now. So I joke that I know enough to be dangerous because I can look at your investments, I can look at your insurance, and I can even look at your tax return. But and really just help that person say, let's call your accountant and ask these questions because I'm seeing something, that seems off, or I just want to drill into a little bit.
I love that. And that's so needed because so many people, they just are afraid to even look at their finances, or they feel almost childlike approaching taxes and budgeting and paying bills, and it feels really overwhelming. And so they don't even have a context for what are the right questions to ask. What are the red flags that I should be looking out for? So I think it's great that you're able to provide that objective eye and that service for people because it's so needed.
Yeah, I do think it's sort of taking something that's intimidating and scary and saying, don't worry about all these other things. Like, this is really just what I need you to know right now. And then we'll build from that a little bit at a time. Money is a skill just like any other. We don't just wake up one day and we can knit a blanket, right? Like everything takes practice. You kind of grow slowly. And yet for some reason, people don't tackle money that way. Like, people look at money and you're either good at it or bad at it. And there is no gray area. And they've already given themselves that title, right? Like they've already sort of put themselves in a corner, where I actually think it doesn't work that way. It's more, wherever you're at, let's build from there. And then you're going to get to a certain point, we're going to build from there. And we're going to keep expanding your knowledge and your skill set, just like it's any other skill set that a person has. Absolutely.
Absolutely. What do you see often with a lot of your clients? There's people who they are currently in debt, or you find that they want to stay in debt, or they get themselves back in debt. They finally pay everything off and they just are addicted to that feeling of debt. And I know that you spoke a little bit to our crew about kind of the mindset behind that, or some of the habits that you see people doing. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I would say people who are in debt generally don't come in and feel good about it. Right. So, it's one of those things where I think when a person comes in and they're embarrassed by it, or they feel a level of shame and they're kind of afraid to disclose their debt balances to me or something like that, I actually say the fact that they're upset about it is a good thing. Like, I don't want you to be happy about it. So if you were happy about it, I would be worried. Right. So
you wouldn't have a job.
Right. Or it's if you're happy about it, you wouldn't come in, right? Like it wouldn't be something that you want to try and get yourself out of. Now, there's something that's very motivating about getting out of debt. So a person wants to get out of debt. When you have extra money, it becomes like a very focused thing where my extra money is going towards debt. And then all of a sudden you get out of debt, and a person, I think, when they get out of debt, assumes that all of a sudden everything's going to be easier, right? Like, as soon as I get out of debt, things are going to be better. And I actually say that it's easier in some ways, but it's actually harder in some others. So what happens is when you have debt, it's a very black and white thing. If I have extra money, I'm paying off debt with it. Well, then all of a sudden you get out of debt and now you have extra money. And what you can do with it is sort of endless. Like, you've got all these options now. And having options is not always better in the sense of, should I put it here? Should I put it towards a vacation? Should I, put it towards a house renovation? And that lack of sort of black and white or focus for people makes it so that it all of a sudden just feels like a free-for-all a little bit. And it's a lot harder to feel focused and intentional with your money. The other thing is the pain of debt is quickly forgotten. I know this is something that we were talking about recently. So
this is huge though. Yeah.
Every single client so far at one point when we get them out of debt has wanted to go back into debt for something. And it's sometimes really quick. Like within a month of paying off that last credit card, they call me and they're like, well, I saw this. I want to buy it. They're doing 0%, same as cash. What do you think? Yeah. And my job is to simply remind them of how hard they just worked to get themselves out of debt, and also what it's like to have debt hanging over your head and, like it's holding you back from maybe making a career change or, doing something that you want to do, because for some reason that pain of being in debt, once you're out of it, you very quickly forget about it. So everybody at some point will want to go back into it.
Yeah. Well, we work with a lot of health and fitness coaches, and I'm sure in their terms, they may not see it so much in the financial area, but I'm sure all of their clients who they work with and even their own journeys, it's like you finally get to your goal weight and you go, well, now I can eat a cupcake, right? And it's like the habits that you create to get to your end goal. It's like you have to continue to maintain those same habits in order to hang on to that end result. And I love that you said that because people really do quickly forget what it took to get there.
Yeah. And I will say the other mistake that I see people make, and I talk about this a lot in sort of the workshops that I do and just one-on-one with people, is we have to save first and be very intentional with what we have coming up that we're going to want to spend our money on before we put effort into paying extra on our credit cards or on our debt. Mm-hmm. I see this happen a lot, and this feels very counterintuitive to people. People want to sort of dispute this concept with me often, and I'm okay with that. But it's one of those things where if you take everything out of your checking account today and you throw it all to your credit card, and then tomorrow your car breaks down, how are we going to pay for that car repair? Mm-hmm. We're gonna have to put it on credit card because we literally just took everything out of our checking account. So I actually think it's better to plan ahead. If you are realistically going to take a vacation, we need to save for that vacation, because if we don't, then it's going to go back on a credit card. And what happens is that's a very emotionally damaging process, because you feel like I'm making progress. Here's 2 steps forward. I'm getting ahead on debt. Like you feel really proud of yourself. And then a few months later, you now have credit card debt again. And it feels very damaging. Like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? And it feels like kind of like a rat wheel, where I would rather have it be, let's just be honest. Some people are willing to sacrifice to the nth degree. If they have debt, they don't eat out, they don't go to the movies, they're not taking vacations, and they want that level of restriction to hit a goal. Other people, it's simply not realistic for them. Like they are going to book a plane ticket to go see a family member in another state if something happens, or they are going to buy a gift for their child's birthday. And my thing is we just have to create balance and be really honest about what you're going to do with your money. Plan for that first. And then when we have extra, the extra actually goes to paying off your debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have such a practical, tangible way of doing it, whereas some of these other plans that are out there are, very restrictive and, almost not livable, not practical for most people. So for someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, what would be their first step in, starting to create a better financial plan for themselves?
Great question. So the first thing is to simply get organized on the bills and the timing of the bills. So the idea is, make a list of all of your bills, but put them in due date order. That way, if you're getting paid every 2 weeks and the timing of your paychecks are changing, sometimes it's the 7th and 21st, sometimes it's the 5th and the 19th. Having it very nice and easy, clear, it prevents late fees, penalties. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, those sorts of things are extremely damaging, right? So we need every dollar. Every dollar counts when we're living paycheck to paycheck. The other thing is switch to cash. And I know nobody wants to do this. It's super hard. And this is where I don't like to over compartmentalize cash. I know sort of the old way, or a lot of people hear me say cash and they think of the cash envelope system, which is sort of like our grandparents' way of doing things. And that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. So this is just think about the day-to-day part of your life. So groceries, eating out, stopping for coffee, the sort of the nickel and diming things, and simply try to give yourself a fixed number of what you can spend every pay period. Take it out in cash. Whether it goes to groceries or eating out usually doesn't matter for most people, as long as you're spending your cash. What happens is that really does make it so that you can see your money very clearly and you always know where you stand. I used to do an exercise with people actually, and I don't do this so much anymore unless it really starts to become a problem. But a person who's using their debit card, these are usually the categories where we use our debit card all the time. So if we were to log into someone's checking account, we see like 39 transactions in the matter of 4 days, right? Yeah. I will have them pull up their checking account, and I have my calculator, and I say, okay, now read off everything in the last week. And while they're reading it off to me, I'm totaling it up on my calculator. And then I get to the bottom and I say, okay, how much do you think you just spent? So mind you, they're reading off these numbers to me, and I ask them, and so what do you think the total is? Take whatever number they say and multiply it by 3. And that's actually how much they spent.
Wow.
This is the category where there's a ton of overspending that happens and we don't even realize it. I call this leakage, right? So it's like it's gone. We don't even notice it. And this is also the area where this is more for convenience and less for what's actually adding value to our life, you know? So it's whether we eat out $100 a week or $1,000, like we're not any happier. Right? Mm-hmm. Like this is maybe life's a little easier in a bad week, but we're not happier if we do it. And so there's a better use of that money. So simply putting yourself on a budget and a flexible budget, it can be one that is okay. Like you can still eat out, you know, it's not like this has to be where you're, you know, couponing every purchase or anything. But it makes it so that at least you can, you know, stick to a set amount and you always know where you stand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that in terms of, you know, helping people who, and this is great advice for those of you who are in a place where you're a little bit stretched or maybe you are living paycheck to paycheck. What about that person who maybe has an abundance of money and just doesn't even know where to begin in terms of creating a spending schedule, or they wonder if they even need it?
Yeah, you know, I would say you may not need it in the sense that you're past due on bills or you're feeling overly stressed about money. But I think whether you have a lot of extra or a little extra, I want a person to feel really great. And I mean, not just okay, but amazing about the things they're doing with their money and just so proud of the way they're spending and the things that they're saving for and the fact that they work really hard for their money and they're doing good things with the money they work so hard for. I want them to feel that level of pride and confidence. And if you don't, then it's not good enough, right? Like I want it to be so much better. And so if you have extra money, that just means that you should be out of debt, saving for some really big goals. It's often times where I have a person come in and, you know, we get them organized, we get them where all the day-to-day stuff becomes super easy, really boring. And I always say the day-to-day part of this should be boring. And if it's boring, that's a beautiful thing, right? Like that's good. The day-to-day part should be easy. We get them on a plan and then I say, okay, so tell me that little nugget in the back of your mind that you've wanted for yourself for so long and you've never even let yourself admit it because you didn't think it was possible, right? Like tell me what that little, it's maybe one of that fleeting thought, right? And I had this one client who said, she provides a service and it's a service that she could really do from anywhere. And she said, you know, I've never told anybody this, but I've always thought it would be really great to have another home in, you know, like Costa Rica or Puerto Rico or, you know, a place where she could go and she could work from there and work from here. And I said, have you ever looked at like what a property costs you there, what this would take? And she had, but she never told anybody. So this is one of those things she's sitting in like on the computer with her, on the couch with her laptop and she's, you know, playing around in her mind, right? Like this is her dream world.
The deferred dream. Yeah.
And we were able to kind of say, well, you know what? Like you could actually do this in 4 years.
Wow.
And this in 4 years for some people seems like a really long time, but this is the type of dream where you're telling yourself it's never possible, right? Mm-hmm. And so to say, wow, like I could do that in 4 years, and now it all of a sudden feels much more tangible.
That's amazing. Is it usually something that big, or what are some examples of things that are those little things in people's?
Yeah. You know what? It can be the simplest thing. So I have like a single mom will often say something like, I have this dream of being able to take my kids on a vacation and have it all paid for. Like what a dream for that person, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that she felt she could never be able to do or freely do without worrying about it. And it's like, we can actually make that happen, right? Like imagine you could go eat out a whole lot, or we could save for this and talk about a value that would just add to your life and a memory and quality time. And so it kind of runs the gamut, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I love that though, because sometimes people don't think big enough, and a house might feel like, whoa, a house in Puerto Rico or Costa Rica. But yeah, guys, it could be something really simple. And if there's been that thing, you know, in the back of your mind that you've been thinking about would be really fun, and it's been on your dream board for the last 5 years, and it just feels really far away, it is possible with just a little simple planning and a little budgeting.
And I will say that I would say the majority of people, even these clients that I've given examples, when they first come to me, they're not there yet thinking about that either. It's kind of in the back of their mind. They're not admitting it to themselves even. It's not until you sort of have to trust in the process that the more clarity you get around one area, it frees up all this mental energy. It frees up all of your capacity to then care about the next thing.
Yeah. No, and that's really true, that most people, when they come in to work with you, if they're in a state of total chaos with their finances, they're not there yet. So, you build on it.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the hardest things about what I do is, we're surrounded by people who maybe don't make good decisions with money, or life is just one big distraction, right? Like, we're faced with this idea that we should buy this and buy that. And we're faced with it constantly. And I think one of the things that I really have to encourage people is that if you feel like you're winging it, if you feel like it's okay, it can actually be better. Like, doesn't have to be the norm. It doesn't have to be that way. There is this whole other grass is greener on the other side thing. So
that's so important, because a lot of people grow up in a situation where their parents maybe did not make smart choices with money, or their friends and family, you're like you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if all of the people around you are clueless about money, you can get into that trap of not even being able to see that that's possible. So I think just an important message for people is that even if you're living paycheck to paycheck today, it is possible to get this under control and really not have this looming over you and this shame around money.
Right. Yeah. It's, what you just said about the 5 people that you surround yourself with. For my workshops, I always have, if you pay for a ticket, somebody can come with you, because I really want you to leave with that person who gets it, who understands what you're going to try and do after that workshop, the changes you're going to try and put in place. Hopefully they will too, but at least if they're not going to do it themselves, they'll at least be there to support you and cheer you on. And I think it's just so important for a person to have another, and it's not even about accountability. It's just understanding and support and, feeling like you have somebody there with you.
That's so cool that you do that, because for any entrepreneur, they know they go to an event or they learn something new and they want to tell the world about it, and no one gets it. Nobody gets it. Guys, I just found out this really cool thing. I want to tell you all about it. And they're like, oh, cool.
Yeah, and then and then you're like, well, but they explained it better, so you're just gonna trust me. Like, you're trying to explain it, and it just doesn't even make sense. Yeah,
it's just like super confusing. Yeah, and you have to be in the room to experience it, to understand it.
It's so true. Yeah,
I love that. So talking about entrepreneurs, a lot of the people that we work with, they're still in that place where they're trying to get their business up and running. And they're in that state of, I know I need to invest in my business for it to grow, but I don't know how much to invest or what are the right investments. So do you have some kind of guideline for people in terms of what they should invest? Is it 10%, or is it just a very personal thing?
Yeah, it's very personal. So I actually, one of the segments on our podcast, we call it the rule of dumb. And it's really like, I take a rule of thumb and I poke holes in it, because I actually think when it comes to money, their rules of thumb don't usually work, to be honest. We're all so different in what we want to do with our money, what baggage we have about money, what sort of experiences we have, where we stand right now financially, whether it's income, debt, all that. So it's less about percentages. It's more about simply prioritizing and saying, like, you guys know, like, some people want to do video, other people don't want to do video. And so there's just, some people want a great website, other people want to do face-to-face. And so it's more about sort of setting that vision for your business and then backing into that and saying, what do we need first? What do we need second? What do we need third? And just sort of saving for one thing at a time, checking it off your list, and then moving on to the next thing. Yeah,
that's so smart. I think that's really cool. And I know we spoke the other day about some of the other strategies that are out there, and you're very much into, let it be something that is customized for the individual, because it's super, super personal. So, there's the Dave Ramsey system, there's this system, there's that system on how to budget and how to pay off debt, and their whole talk about credit cards. So I would love for you to kind of touch on this a little bit, because you have such great insight on this. And I know that you had such a great example that you gave. So I want you to share that as well.
God, I hope I can remember what the example was. So, I mean, I can just sort of talk about what I see in this regard is, I think money is simply not one size fits all. And so I think what happens a lot of the time is there are so many benefits to like the Dave Ramsey way or the Susie Orman way or the Robert Kiyosaki philosophy. And there's all these benefits. And for somebody that looks at that and it works 100% for them, that's great. But what happens is some people will try that way. And when it doesn't work for them, what happens is they're reading this book, let's say, that says this system works for everybody. And so when it doesn't work for them, instead of just saying, you know what, that system didn't work for me, it's not a good fit, they're then blaming themselves. I'm bad with money. I'm too stupid to do this, or I'm never going to do this right. I'm always, and like they start to label themselves. Yeah. And really it's just that there is no system for everybody. There isn't. And so my job, I always say, is to have a person who comes to me and we really pick and choose. Like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit from this. I'm going to do a little bit from that. And then I have this one little idea that I like to do. And it's sort of, you know, taking where a person comes to me and really building from there. And, you know, some people can handle a really complicated system and other people, we need to make it as simple as possible because they don't want to do anymore, you know? So some people, I'll give you an example. Some people come to me and they want to know where every dollar goes. They want to know, they want to track everything. They like spreadsheets. Yeah, you know, and other people are like, if you make me do that, I will not do anything. I will quit. Well, so why would I try to, I mean, I would be setting them up for failure, right? Like if I tried to get them to do something that either doesn't fit their personality or their goals in general. So my job is to say, okay, this is not going to work for you, but this part will. So let's take this little piece and really craft something that works for them. And, you know, I always say sometimes what happens is a person will come in and I will tell them do X, Y, and Z. And then another person will come in and I will say, don't ever do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And it's not because I'm a liar. It's actually because I know what I'm talking about, right? Like it's because X, Y, and Z will work great for you and it is not going to work great for somebody else. So yeah. Yeah.
And the thing I was kind of referencing before was, you know, paying off which credit card bill to pay off first. This is like the biggest thing that I hear from people who love all of those different strategies. And I thought you made such a great point about kind of poking holes in their rules of thumb.
Yeah. Okay. So this is getting out of debt for sure is, you know, a lot of people's goal is to get out of debt. And there's this idea of like, how do I do it? So, you know, where do I even begin? And first of all, you always want to pay the minimums on all of your debts. And then there's different strategies to employ on which debt do you focus on first, second, third, how do you do it? So Dave Ramsey, he sort of made popular the snowball approach, which is you put all of your debts in order of balance amount and you pay the one with the smallest balance first and then the one with the second balance and so forth. And you just, you know, you keep going and you get the smaller ones first. His theory is that you experience a quick win, it gets motivating, you get fired up and you keep going. Susie Orman, she likes the avalanche approach, and that is the idea that you pay all the minimums, but then you rank them in order of interest rate, and you pay off the one with the highest interest rate first. That theory, or her theory, is that one is costing you the most money. So by paying that one off, it's freeing up the most, it's costing you the least amount of money over time. Robert Kiyosaki, he is the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So there is no name for this one. I really should just come up with a name, but the idea, you know, he likes real estate. So you sort of exclude real estate and then you rank all of your debts by payment amount. And the idea is that you pay off the one with the highest payment amount first because that one is taking up the most cash flow every month. And so as soon as you pay it off, you then free up all this extra money. I actually say that there's a fourth way, which is the one with the most emotional baggage. And it is your
yeah, I think that's so smart.
Yeah. And, you know, some people, you know, have that debt where they look at it and they really regret a decision that they made, or it's kind of like they're reliving this decision that they can't undo. And it's kind of like we need to get that out of your life sometimes. So we want to put that one first. And, you know, the example I always give is I had a woman come in, she had 3 credit cards, each with $5,000 on them, you know, around 5,000. And we were kind of looking like, well, which one should we target first? And one of them was the $5,000 she paid her attorney for her divorce. And it was one of those things where every month she made that payment and she relived it and she got sad and bitter and jaded and hurt all over again. And it was like, why do we want that? in your life, right? Like we don't need that constant reminder. So let's focus on that one first. The thing that they all have in common is that they all say pick one debt and throw everything to one debt at a time. They simply disagree on which debt that should be first. This is where people come to me and they're like, well, I was talk to my friend, or I read a blog, or listen to a podcast, right? And they said, don't do it that way. This is the right way. And so they switch. When really, there is no wrong way to get out of debt. Like if you're getting out of debt, you are doing something right. So all I want you to do is pick one debt, throw everything to it that you have extra, and you do not change course until that one's gone. And this is a really personal thing because some clients, have an emotional reaction to one part of debt. Another may just look at all their debts and dislike all of them. Some people need a quick win to stay motivated, where other people come to me and they're like, you know what, I'm getting out of debt no matter what. I hate it. Like I am determined. And so, we can do the one with the highest interest rate first because you're getting out of debt no matter what. Let's do it in the cheapest way possible.
Right. So smart. And you really just, you guys listening, it's all about your personal preference. Whatever your thing is, whatever strategy works best for you, you've just got to find the one that aligns best with your personal goals and your personality and what's going to keep you motivated to continue to move through this process.
Yeah. So I would say for sure, like the number one point to take is to simply focus on one at a time. So you pay the minimums on everything, focus on one, just pick one, and you are like tunnel vision. Like you just set your sights on that one and karate chop that sucker. And what you don't want to do is if you have, like an extra $500 a month, don't throw an extra 100, 100, 100, and 100. Or the other thing people do is they come in and they're paying more than the minimums on everything, right? So don't do that. Really, you want to set your sights on one, pay the minimums on everything except for one, and every extra dollar goes to that one.
Mm-hmm. And what is the benefit of paying the minimums and then just paying? Is it just really to get one off the table completely?
Yeah, this really applies to all financial goals and not just debt. So the idea is that the idea of divide and conquer actually doesn't work when it comes to money. You end up dividing your money and not conquering anything. So what happens when you pick one goal at a time, it becomes really clear then to say, if I have this much going to it every month, this is what month I'm going to have that either paid off or when I'm going to hit that savings goal. It becomes now where you can actually see into the future much more clearly, and you can actually see it happening faster. So, you see that balance getting lower faster, and that's very rewarding. It also makes it so if you have let's say a goal of getting out of debt, but also taking a vacation, it allows you to say, well, the sooner I get out of debt, the sooner I can start saving for this vacation. And one becomes the reward for another. And it actually kind of keeps you motivated.
Okay. This is really good stuff. We actually just had someone comment and say, thank you, I pay extra on everything. So we're making things happen right now.
Yes. And this is, I'm going to press this point. Do not feel badly about doing it. You are not allowed to live in the past, but now going forward, you're going to just change that up a little bit. You're doing something right in the sense that you're paying extra. So keep that in mind, give yourself a pat on the back. But I think what's going to happen, I don't know what her name is, but, or him or her, but, so Amy, yes, please just going forward, pay the minimums on everything, and you're going to feel so much more focused. You're going to just get super excited and motivated, I bet.
I love that. Great advice. So I know that you and your husband, you guys are great. You are teamwork, partnership, and you also have an awesome podcast that I'm going to plug right now, The Saver and the Spender. And I think for a lot of women, especially because Angie and I work with primarily women, this idea of saving and financial planning is not something that's usually a collaborative process for couples. And there's usually one saver and one spender. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about, why is it so important for both parties to be involved, and how can someone who maybe has not a great relationship around money with their partner, how can they start to open up that conversation?
Great question. So really quickly, if you don't mind me commenting on what Amy just posted, I saw another, so she was saying, I didn't read the whole comment, but she just got a bonus. and she's going to throw it all to 2 small balances. Let me just say really quickly, Amy, please think ahead first. Make sure you have money set aside for anything that might come up. If you're going to need new tires next month, if you're going to need, something for kids for the summer, like if there's a day camp you need to pay for, taxes, if there's a medical bill, that you've got, think about everything you have coming up first, set money aside for that. And then if you have the extra to pay off those 2 credit cards, I am all for it. I will be your biggest cheerleader. But what I don't want you to do is pay off those credit cards and then a month later something happens that we maybe could have planned for and it goes back on the credit card. You'll end up like really beating yourself up. And I don't want you to be on that emotional roller coaster ride. So just a point of caution there, but let us know what you decide to do. Okay. All right.
I love it. And I love it, Kelsa, you call them whammies.
Yes, get ready for a whammy. Chances are there's things that we don't know when they're going to happen, but they are simply a part of life. A car repair, clothing, medical expense, something for the house, kids things, all sorts of stuff that you simply look ahead. We may not have anything like that coming up, or you might, so just get ready for it first. You'll feel so much better the day you look and you're like, I was ready for this. Go me, right? And it actually feels like a financial win as opposed to a financial whammy. Yes.
You have a whole strategy behind this. So before we get into the other question, if you want to touch a little bit on this, since we're on this topic.
Yeah. So this is actually, I do call this category the whammies. These are the expenses that don't happen every month, but when they happen big. And this usually is by far the category that causes the most stress for people. We're never ready for them. We tend not to have a budget in place for them. And so we feel guilty when we spend the money on these things. So clothing, for example, and, people say to me, well, I'm not a big clothing shopper. You may not be a big clothing shopper, but it happens, we don't spend $100 a month on clothes. We will go 6 months, however long, and we need to update our wardrobe. So it feels like a really big hit. And all I want a person to do is make a list of all of these expenses. Don't try to be all inclusive and don't try to be perfect because that's not possible. Simply come up with what you think these things are and try to come up with a monthly number. And just like it's a bill to you, take that monthly amount and put it into a savings account. I really I don't know if I can plug brands. I think I can, but like Capital1360.com is an online bank. It'll link directly to whatever checking account a person has. They allow you to open as many savings accounts as you want. So you can have a car repair fund and a home maintenance fund and a clothing fund. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Like you could have, I did a poll once in my Facebook group about like, how many savings accounts do you guys have? And this is, all of my clients in there. And one gal had 22 savings accounts. Yes. She was excited. And you don't have to have that many. Any that you have will simply prevent one less whammy in the future. So, any you have is a good thing. And then just like it's a bill to you on a set date, put that money in its proper bucket. And then that way it's getting the money out of your checking account. When those expenses happen, you actually feel really good. You're like, oh, I was already ready for this and no big deal. And it actually will help you to have a budget, because if you need to go clothing shopping right now, a lot of people are sort of like, well, how much should I spend? I don't know. It's sort of like an emotional decision. Like, what kind of month am I having? How good have I been? Did I just get a bonus? Where really you just look at your clothing fund and whatever's in there you can spend, and you can feel awesome spending it and you can love spending it, but that's all you get, right? And you don't have to feel badly about it. So that is that strategy.
I love it. And guys, you don't need to like Kelsa said, have some kind of bonus or be in a moment of, I'm going to treat myself in order to buy some new underwear. Like if you're wearing 8-year-old underwear, like it's time to treat yourself, time to upgrade.
It's so funny you say that. I have women come in and they're like, well, I bought myself bras, and then they have to like tell me this story about and I'm like, did you have the money in your clothing fund? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, God bless you. I don't care. Like, you're fine. You can buy the bras. You don't have to justify it. And this is what's happening, is we've gotten convinced that we need to justify spending money. And it's because of all the combination of all of the poor decisions we've made in the past have made us feel like when we do spend money, there has to be a really good reason for it in order to convince ourselves it's not a bad decision. Where buying ourselves clothes, even if it's a clothing item you don't need, you just really saw that skirt and you loved it and you just had to have that skirt, then buy it, right? If you have money in the clothing fund, it's not that big of a deal. Like, this is not the area of our life where we should really be so focused on taking, 12 days to decide whether or not we can buy ourselves something. It's one of those things where I want people's energy to be spent on the bigger picture, like setting goals and really putting your money behind your dream.
Absolutely. And I think you make a great point in terms of that, having that money set aside in that account. I know some of you do it in cash if you're doing the Dave Ramsey envelope system, but Kelsa's system is relatively similar, except instead of taking it and putting it in envelopes in cash, you're transferring it into an additional savings account, and she recommends Capital One 360. So Kelsa, when somebody maybe hasn't gone through that process yet and they have additional money in their savings, what do you find usually happens for that person if they want to go and make some kind of, they want to treat themselves in some way?
Yeah. And I do call this the modern version of the cash envelope system. That's sort of just what I sort of nicknamed it. But, I'm not going to complain if a person comes to me and they say, I have $5,000 all in one savings account. I mean, that's wonderful. And I don't want a person to feel badly about that. But I would rather have it partitioned out and set aside into particular categories. And I want you to know very clearly what can or can't that money be used for. Because what happens all the time is when you touch your savings account, when it's all lumped together like that, there's something that feels very yucky about it, right? Like there's just, even if you touch it for something like a car repair, we for some reason just feel really badly touching our savings account. My theory is that it's because we don't really know exactly what it is meant to be used for or not. And we have this little fear that, oh my God, I just touched it. What if something else happens tomorrow and I have to dip into it again? And that's very scary. So where if you have all these different buckets, like you can go clothing shopping on a Friday and spend $500, take it out of your clothing fund. Your car can break down on a Saturday. You take the $500 out of your car repair fund and pay for it. And then you can book plane tickets on a Sunday and pay $1,000 and use the travel fund. And when you do it that way, none of those things are connected, right? Like none of those things really affect you. They just so happen to all happen in one weekend, but they're not really connected. But if you have all of your money in one savings account, imagine dipping into it on a Friday for clothing and then your car breaks down on a Saturday. You immediately regret buying yourself clothes the day before when that's not really fair, right? And then you maybe don't book those plane tickets on Sunday because you think, oh my God, I've already touched my savings account twice. Like I'm terrible with money. And so I can't book these plane tickets.
Yep. That's why I'm so into this system now. I think it's so smart. And I mean, I'm very type A. So this very much excites my brain. And I'm like, yes, I want to have all of this so set up. And I'd probably get addicted to like the game of putting it all together and making it all pretty.
You know what you just said? Like it does become a game. Like my clients can get addicted in a good way. Like, I mean, if this is something you're addicted to, then like saving money and managing your money in a smart way, like that's a good addiction, right? But because it does become a game, it's like, well, I have this much in my travel fund, but I need this much more. And you immediately know, you know what? I'm going to take a little from my clothing. I'm going to take a little bit from my gift, but you know what the trade-off is and you can make that trade-off. It's ultimately your decision. But what's happening is people are making the trade-off all the time and not really knowing what that trade-off is, right? Where simply make it and just be really intentional about it.
Yeah, totally. So to kind of jump back to what we were about to get into before, for people who are listening to this and they're learning a lot, and now they want to implement some of these things, how can they approach their spouse if they maybe have a tense relationship around money?
Great question. I would say in bite sizes. So that's the biggest thing I would say is to start is this is not a change. This is not a marathon where you're going to sit down on a Saturday and spend 6 hours at the dining room table trying to hash through all of this. So if anything, that's going to create frustration, a lot of tension. So go into it with patience and try to focus on sort of one thing at a time. The other thing, so let's say we get organized on just the bills, right? And we simply say, here's our bills. Did you know about these? I just want us to be on the same page. Here's how much we have going out in bills every month. Do you see anything that we can cut? Do you see any that you didn't know we had? And just start talking about that. And then a couple weeks later, start talking about here's how much we spent on groceries, or really just one thing at a time, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing I will say is if you are the person who manages the money, which I don't believe that it takes two people. It really does take one person to sort of manage it. It takes two people to make decisions around it though. So, if we have extra, what goal are we doing? What is our value system? That takes two people in a relationship, but it takes one person to transfer money and pay bills. It's all done online now, right? So it's pretty quick. I am going to challenge this person to give continuous updates to the other person that are both positive and negative. What I see happen all the time is the only time that they get their spouse involved is when it's bad and it's when they need to put out a fire. And then it's like, no wonder the other person doesn't want to look at it, doesn't want to pay attention, doesn't want to be involved. They think it's a negative thing because they're only seeing it or only getting involved when it's bad. Right. And so they have this very negative relationship with it where continuous check-ins every couple of weeks. Hey, here's where we're good. Here's where we went over. Very black and white. It's not and this is all your fault. It simply becomes like a bullet point. Right. And it's continuous. It's one of those things that happens good and bad.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And guys, if you have a spouse or, significant other, have them listen to this and, reach out to Kelsa and connect with her, because if it's something that is a little bit too overwhelming, she can absolutely work with you. She does do, one-on-one consulting and coaching, so she can get you set up so that this isn't something that you have to do all on your own.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that. I do feel like this is probably the area where clients tell me all the time, like, that I'm kind of a marriage counselor, and it doesn't, I think it's just one of those things where there's so much tension that can sometimes go into this conversation. And I can easily say, I know you're hearing it this way, but this is actually what I'm seeing. I know you think that this is what the problem is, but actually that's not a spending problem that you guys have, right? So it's a very objective. I don't focus on the past. I don't want to really, I think there's always this balance between what have we done in the past and what do we want to do going forward. And I would much rather focus on the future. And just because we've done that in the past doesn't mean we want to keep doing it or that it supports where we want to be. And so I would much rather focus on the future. There's all these reviews on Facebook of that I've saved a marriage or any number of things. And it's the number one cause of divorce in our country, unfortunately. And so, but it doesn't have to be, right? Like it can be super straightforward. Everybody, the saver and the spender, it's all about the ways Michael and I have sort of figured out how to blend our personalities in a way that supports us both with our money. And I think it can be that way for everybody. So each of you can have your own spending money. Like, one of the things women say is, well, I told my husband I want to come see you, but he says you're going to tell him we have to cut the football package or something. And it's like, that's not the way I work. I promise. You can ask anybody. It's, sometimes I think people come in and they want me to sort of take like a red marker and like, cut this and cut this. Like that's a TV show. That's not what I do. I really, it's like, here's this picture. I'm going to show you exactly where you're at. And then we're going to have a conversation about, are you good with that? If you're good with it, then I'm good with it. Do you want to hit your goals faster? And if so, here's how much we need to find in the budget. Let's talk about all the ways we could pull from, right? But it's not up to me, how other people live their life. So I just want it to be something that they feel really good about.
Yes, you're providing that objective eye and that level of expertise to actually give some guidelines on what would make sense and what would be practical and what would help that person achieve their goal. So, yeah.
And if a person, if we say during the meeting that we have to find X amount, usually what I tell a person is I say, okay, I'm going to go through all of the ways that I see that you could possibly cut back. You don't have to say yes to all of these, but you can't say no to all of them either. It's like you've got to make some decisions, right? So, but it's whatever they see is, everybody has a non-negotiable, right? Like I'm not willing to cut the housekeeper, or I'm not willing to cut the football package, or, I'm not willing to cut my kids' soccer. Everybody has their thing, and that's totally okay. We just can't have everything be our thing.
Yeah. So would it be good for a couple to both kind of pick at least one non-negotiable, like one treat for themselves?
Yeah. I actually have clients when they're a couple, they come in and we do sort of a value systems conversation where separately I have them write down the things that they value most in life, their priorities. And there's a little exercise that we do at the start of it to get them in the right frame of mind. And I will tell you, every single couple so far has had the same value system.
What?
here's the thing is you're married for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Like you're with that person because your value system in life is probably the same, whether you put God first or you're not religious, whether family is important to you or your career or your business or, the way that we do that, it's likely that they actually have the exact same values. And when we can point out the fact that you guys actually want the exact same things, you're simply going about it from two different strategies. We just need to get you on the same page because you actually both have the exact same goal. It becomes where it's like, oh, well, they end up starting to work together, they get it more, and it actually becomes so much easier.
Yeah, so good, so good. I do want to talk a little bit as well about entrepreneurship, since this is the Entrepreneur Now podcast.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of the ladies that we work with, they are trying to build their businesses and get their husbands on board. So this is all amazing advice. But what about for someone who, is maybe just starting their own coaching business, or, we have a lot of ladies in network marketing who are making a decent amount of money and they're wondering, what is the next step? Do I need to protect myself with an LLC? What do I need to have in place? So when do you recommend somebody starts to look at some of those pieces?
I say the sooner the better, to be honest. I don't think it's really ever too early to just, get an LLC and start and open a business checking account and try to keep everything as separated as possible. Mm-hmm. It makes it easier so that as your business grows, it's all separated and it's all, it's very easy to see and it's very clear. Things aren't commingled. If you've got moving parts personally and you don't feel in control of your money personally, and then all of a sudden you're adding the complication of a business into it, it only makes it so much harder. Where if you actually separate the two, people think that sounds more complicated. It actually makes things easier. So the sooner you can get the business checking account going, all of your business revenue goes in there, and then you can pay for your business expenses out of there. It makes it really obvious to you of, I'm either doing really good because I have extra in there, or my expenses are exceeding my revenue. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. That's so good. And I think also for taxes, that makes things, much, much, much clearer. Because if it's, like you said, commingled with all of your personal expenses, what did you spend on the business? What's a business expense? What's a personal expense? And at the end of the year, it's like, have fun figuring that out.
Yeah. And I actually think so many people probably miss a number of expenses that they could be writing off because they don't keep it organized throughout the year. And there's no doubt in my mind, I can't remember in November what I spent in February. That's never going to happen. So I could go through my checking account or my credit card, but I don't remember what some of that stuff is, and it wasn't personal or business. And so by keeping it separated, and this is one of the things I like to tell people when you're first starting out, is open a business checking account and start getting everything that's business related coming in and out of there. And then go open a mint.com account or create an account at mint.com. It is a free service. It markets itself as budgeting software. I don't really consider it budgeting because what it does is it simply tracks how you've already spent your money. You can categorize it. And in my mind, that's bookkeeping, right? Like that's tracking what you've already done with your money is a bookkeeping service. Budgeting is planning ahead for the future. So they're kind of two different things. But what you can do is you can open a mint.com account, have it sync only with the business checking account. So don't have it sync with both personal and business. That way, all of those transactions get downloaded. You can categorize it. So you can have office supplies, marketing, products, whatever. And then at the end of the year, there's a summary tab. You can print that tab from January 1st to December 31st. It's going to list all of your expenses by category and give you the totals. And it's as simple as taking that into your accountant and saying, here's my expenses.
Right.
So really straightforward, right? It really can be that simple. Really.
Yeah. Or hire a bookkeeper to just go through and do those things for you. If, give them access to your mint.com account, they won't have access to your checking account, so they can't spend any of your money. They'll see what you're making. So hire someone that you trust. And they'll see your expenses. But I think that's a huge thing, especially as your business starts to grow. That's a great thing to outsource early on.
This is a perfect example of if you are not going to do it, just be honest. It's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person, right? Just be honest with the fact that either you're going to take the time to sort of create the account or keep it updated or any number of things. And if you're not, outsource it. It will be worth it to simply focus on the things that you really feel like you're good at, or where it's going to generate you money and all that kind of stuff, and not have this in the back of your mind, this nagging thought of, I'm doing really good, but I have not even begun to think about taxes. Like that really holds a person back.
Yeah. And I think this is so relevant right now because we're approaching April at the time of recording this. So we're like in the heat of everyone realizing, oh crap, I need to now go and organize my taxes. And Tony Robbins always talks about the pain pleasure principle and how people will avoid it because it's really stressful. They don't want to look at it until it's April 1st. And then all of a sudden they dive in and start organizing it because not paying your taxes is a little bit more painful once you, if you're past the due date.
I will tell you that now is the time, if you haven't, to get your taxes done, Allison, for last year. And it is also the time to get them done for the start of this year. So nobody you just spent hours or whatever because you didn't have a system in place getting your taxes done. The last thing you want to do is spend time on taxes, but we are 4 months almost into the new year. Get it done now and get this mint.com set up. Get it all set up. That way you are set for the rest of this year and you will not find yourself in this position at this time. I also say this, that the end of December, beginning of January is the best time to think about Christmas, but it is the last minute that people actually want to be thinking. Like, we're finally done with the holidays. People are saying things like, oh, thank God we're done with the holidays, right? And now that's when I'm saying, you know what? It's fresh in your mind. What kinds of things did you spend money on that you forgot about? Whether that's dinner for Christmas Eve at your house that you forgot that you host every year, or the Christmas decorations that you buy every year. Like, it's now fresh in your mind. Get it all on paper right now and get planning for next year. So smart.
So smart. And I think a lot of people, like you said, they're like, they just get through tax season or they just get through Christmas. And the last thing they want to do is now deal with the following year or the current year's process of that. But like you said, if it's fresh in your mind, you know what needs to be done, take action on it immediately. And I think right now, we're about 4 months into the year or 3 months into the year. So this is the perfect time. You're not going to have as much to catch up on. Yes, work on your 2016 information first, prioritize that. But, as you're creating the system, even though it might be a little bit challenging to do it after the fact, once it's done, you'll be able to quickly implement it for the current year.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys noticed this too with just coaching the business owners, but my clients will spend more time worrying about something and thinking about it and beating themselves up for it than the amount of time it actually takes to put a new system in place, fix it, and be proactive, right? And being proactive, like, you are spending time and energy, but it actually feels productive. It feels good, as opposed to all of that mental anguish or bad negative self-talk that we're doing when we're not doing something the way we actually want to do it. So it's so much more toxic to not do it than to just sit down, get it done, block out your calendar, put your phone on Do Not Disturb, turn off Facebook for a few hours, right? And just get it done. You nailed it. People will spend an amazing amount of time and energy exhausting themselves about all of the what ifs, all of the negative scenarios, and putting themselves into a state of total information paralysis. And it's like, you just got to make a decision. We've all had times in our life where we've felt that way. So it is a part of a human experience in some ways. Totally. But overwhelm is a choice. And if you keep waiting, it's not going to get easier. And don't wait until, like I said, the Tony Robbins thing, pain pleasure principle, don't wait until it's so unbearably painful to not look at it that you make a decision. Like, don't wait to file for bankruptcy to reach out to Kelsa and start implementing some of the things that she's sharing with us today. Do it now so that you don't have to get into that place and be putting out fires and doing damage control. Yeah. And that's, there is no perfect time to start anything new, I think, whether that's a diet. So, if you tell yourself, well, I'm going to start, eating healthy tomorrow. So you eat a bunch of cupcakes today. It's one of the people will very easily say, well, I'm going to call her as soon as I get this credit card paid off, or I'm going to call her as soon as I get this bill is done. And it's kind of like taking my job away from me in the sense of, I might not have you do it that way. I might say, you know what, I don't see that serves you well long term. Let me look at it and give you a pecking order of, do this first, do this second, do this third. And that way you go into it with a level of confidence that this is exactly what I need to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And for some people, with taxes right now, what are some things that business owners don't realize they can write off? And what are some things that they write off that they actually can't? What are the things that you see most often?
Yeah, so the IRS is definitely more of a gray area than people realize. There are some things that they are very specific on, very black and white on. Clothing is one of them. So, clothing, it has to have your logo on it. People say, well, but I have to look nice for work. But I think that's true for all of us. So I think the IRS is kind of like, well, then nobody can write it off. I don't know. And I don't agree with it. I always joke that the IRS doesn't ask me for my opinion. I wish they would. I wish they would call me and check with me, but they don't. So clothing is one of those where you can't write it off. When it comes to if you are a product where you buy a product and you sell a product, so whether that's a multi-level marketing type thing, product for your own personal use is not deductible. But if you're buying product, some of it can be used for if you're giving it away for people to try as sort of marketing. That portion can be written off. We don't always know. So that's the tricky part is when I meet with people, it's just all one order a month, right? So they don't know. This is where use the percentage. So always take 30% of it as an expense for the business, or always take 60% depending on how much you're using, but just pick a percentage and kind of go with it from there. The other thing I see people that they don't write off enough is home office expenses. Oh. So people often know that they can do home office, but even things like toilet paper, cleaning supplies, paper towel, landscaping, housekeeping, light bulbs, I think people assume mortgage or rent and utilities, right? Yeah. And they kind of just do that, but it's actually so much more than that. So it's really anything for your house, you're going to want to do a percentage based on your square footage. And so it can actually be so much more aggressive than what I see most people are actually doing when it comes to the home office.
Oh, this is so interesting. Okay, I didn't know that you could do toilet paper and things like that. Yeah. So is it just a percentage? Because if it's a home office, I know sometimes, or I've heard that you need to have a specific room delegated to your office. Or, well, if you get audited and they come to your house and want to peek around, not telling you guys to do that, just passing on what I've heard. But yeah, that's so interesting with the housekeeper and stuff as well. Would that also then have to be a percentage of what you pay the housekeeper?
It's all a percentage. Yeah. So you're going to take all of these expenses. So usually what I recommend is, let's say you're going to go to Costco. Okay. Costco, or Sam's Club, whatever, if you're going to buy groceries, those are not deductible at all. That's food for you, unless you're a personal chef or something, which I think one person in your group was. Yeah. So that's a little bit, but let's just assume you're not. So the groceries for your own personal use are not. But the things for the house, trash bags, cleaning supplies, a mop, all of that is a percentage that you can write off. And so I tell people, do 2 separate transactions when you go to the grocery store. So if you're going to go to Target, put all your groceries or the clothing and all the stuff that's personal in one transaction, put all the other ones in a separate transaction. That way it's out of the business. You don't get to write off the whole receipt, but you do get to write off. Let's say you have a room that's 10 by 10, so that's 100 square feet, and you have a 1,000 square foot house or apartment. You would get to write off 10% of everything. So 10% of your rent, 10% of utilities, 10% of that receipt from Costco or Sam's Club and that kind of thing. And so you could simply, if you have all of those, you can either enter them into a spreadsheet, you can total them up at the end of the year, however you want to do it. But at least that way it becomes a lot easier. Does that make sense? Oh,
that makes perfect sense. I think that's great. I know that that's a struggle that a lot of people have, especially with figuring out what is the percentage that I can use? How do I map this out? So I think this is really, really valuable and going to give a lot of people clarity. And I do have one last question for you, because this was a big eye opener, I know, for a lot of people, in how do people actually determine what they're going to owe in taxes? Because this is actually something that I wasn't totally clear on as well. And so a lot of people will try to guesstimate and just take a bunch of money and be like, I think this is what I'm going to owe, and then live either really freely or really conservatively and either get a whammy or have, hopefully a lot of extra money. But it's nice to be able to determine that in advance.
Yeah. And this could be like a whole separate,
Yeah.
it's complicated. I do try to make it as simple as possible, but this is where there's so much misinformation out there that I wish I could sort of eliminate all of it from people's mind and pretend like they never heard half of it. A lot of people say, oh, well, my accountant said I should set aside 40% of everything I make for taxes. And I just think, wow, that is such a huge number. And what happens is people hear that, and when they don't do it, they immediately assume that they're way underfunding it. They're in over their head. They're going to get this huge tax bill. And that fear and worry alone right there makes people want to stick their head in their sand and not face it. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's why I really wish I could just convince people it doesn't work that way. Okay. That 40% number, I don't know where it started. I don't know who started it. It's not correct. So what happens is you have your business revenue. So all the money that comes in from clients or orders, doesn't matter. That is not what you pay tax on. Okay. So you do not need to take 40% of that number. After you have that money come in, you pay all of your expenses that are considered business expenses. Whatever is left is called your profit. That is the number that you would pay tax on. Okay. So if you work, if you work full time at another job, that's just going to flow through and get added to your normal pay, and we're going to have to pay tax on it. Or you might have to, if that's all you have, like you only own your own business, you would pay tax on that all by itself. And there's a number of things after that, whether you're a business owner or not. When you're an individual, you get to write off. So the IRS gives everybody what they call the standard deduction. Okay. And then they give everybody the personal exemption amount. So those are the two things that everybody gets to write off. And, why it has to be so complicated, I don't know. What those numbers are different if you're an individual tax filer or a married filing joint, married filing separate, all that kind of stuff. But it is as simple as Googling it and saying standard deduction, individual filer, 2017, and it's a set number. Okay. So once you know those numbers, that then lowers your profit. Does that make sense? Because everybody gets those, whether you're a business owner or not, those are the numbers you get. And so you would actually lower your profit. Now depending on which category you're in, it's the same no matter how much money you make, right? Yes. Yes. And this is where you can take more than that. But one of my rules, what you were saying is some people have too much and some people don't have enough. It's always better to be conservative. It's always better to use smaller percentages, use the standard deduction, even though there are some cases where you could take more, because that's the most conservative approach. And if tax time comes and you have more in savings than you need, that is a beautiful thing. That is actually our goal, right? Yeah. Now, I don't want you to have 3 times what you need, but at the same time, I would love it if you have more than what you need. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the way it works is there's actually a few different tax rates. There is the federal income tax rate. There is the Social Security and Medicare. And as a small business owner, that is a fixed number. It's 15.3%. The federal income tax rate fluctuates based on how much money you make. So for some people, it's 0. For some people, it's 15%, 25%. Etc. So the more money you make, the more taxes you pay. That's the way our system works. That's the federal. Social Security and Medicare, that is a fixed number. It doesn't change no matter what. So that's 15.3%. And then state taxes. And that number changes as well. Some states, I think there's 13 of them, don't have state income tax at all. So you might not owe anything. So all you have to do is kind of search, the federal tax bracket. And again, what your number is based on if you're individual, married, etc. And once you know your percentage, so this is where I think, imagine if you were in the 25% tax bracket for federal, and then you add in the 15% for Social Security and Medicare. Does that make sense? So that's the 40%. I think that's where this 40% number came from. Okay. But it's not 40% on the big number. It's 40% of the bottom number, right? Which is a big difference. Yeah. So, but because people aren't organized throughout the year on what's coming in versus the expenses, I think CPAs in general are like, do 40% of everything you make.
Just to be safe.
Just to be safe. But I think what's happening is that is such a big number and no one's doing it, that then they get scared and they don't want to look at all. right? So then they don't do anything. Where do 40% or 30%, if you're in an even lower tax bracket, of whatever you have left, revenue minus expenses. And if you are doing something like mint.com throughout the year, it's really obvious. It becomes super easy to look at it and be like, this is what my profit is right now, or this is where I'm standing. And so I'm going to put a little extra in savings.
Yeah, it's all laid out for you, already done.
Yes, it actually becomes much more straightforward. And again, the goal is that hopefully your number is even less than these estimates I'm giving you. I think one of the things that I'll have a CPA sometimes come to some of my workshops and, they'll want to raise their hand and be like, it actually is this and percentage of, and it's like, you know what? A CPA needs to know all of that. Yeah. None of us, we don't need to know. The whole purpose is that you're going to hire a CPA at the end of the year to actually file the tax return and do all those calculations. All I want a business owner to do is have a general understanding and a way of simply estimating real time where they stand so that you always have clarity. So that way it stops the worry, it stops the stress, and people can move on so much more effectively from there. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, I know that you have to jump off in a few minutes, but are you open to do one last question? Or Yeah, of course.
All right, well,
let me just check. Oh yeah, nope, we've got like 10 minutes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We have a live question from Jill who says, she's interested in your take on paying off her mortgage or investing in another property.
Good question. I don't know Jill. I don't know if I know enough about Jill's financial situation and goals and all that kind of stuff to effectively answer, but I will say some questions that maybe you can ask yourself. Do you want to be a rental property owner? Like, is this going to go to be a rental property? Maybe I shouldn't assume that, but some people love having rental properties. It doesn't stress them out. The worry of having like a whammy that happens at another rental property or that kind of thing can really overwhelm some people, and they just shouldn't be landlords. They shouldn't own multiple properties. Other people handle that stress just fine. Like, it's not something that really worries them. And so that's one of the first questions I ask when a person comes in and says, I've heard that real estate is good. Like, should I do it? And it's not even about the finances. It's more about, your goals in life. Do you see yourself as a landlord? Does it worry you that you might get that call at 11 o'clock at night that there's a flood in the bathroom? Like, some people that it's not a big deal, and other people it becomes a big concern. The other thing is, are we working? What's our cash flow position? And what I usually say when it comes to bigger goals, because these are both big goals, right? Like, these are long-term. We're talking about probably a big dollar amount. And again, I don't know what her mortgage balance is, but so I'm assuming it's big. Maybe set a benchmark. So if you're at, let's say, 210,000, maybe tell yourself, like, as soon as I get it under 200, money in for a rental property. Does that make sense? Or in other words, tie your responsible goal to the goal that you actually want, something that's not necessary, but you want it, then try to do one and then the other. Because it actually keeps you motivated to the first one. Does that make sense? I don't know if she's still on.
But yeah, I think that's pretty clear. And, it's definitely hard to determine if you don't know that individual's financial situations. I think that those are some great guidelines for someone who's interested in possibly investing in another property as well. So yeah, Kelsa, do you have any last pieces of advice for those entrepreneurs out there and those people who are just trying to get their financial situation in place?
I think it's the biggest thing I would say is at some point a client just sort of needs to, the first step is sort of drawing the line in the sand and saying, it needs to be different after today. Like, I am going to make this different from here. It's not going to be the same anymore. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it different. With money, it's not usually we decide today and then tomorrow it's all better, right. And it's tough, right? Like, it's tough. You have to know that you're committed. And I think that that's sort of the first step. You have to just sort of draw the line in the sand and say, I want this better for myself. I want to feel good about this. I want to be better than I am. Even if I'm good now, I want to be even better than I am. And I think that that's sort of the first the first step. It also makes it so that no matter what happens, whether it is a whammy that tries to derail you or an argument with your spouse or a mistake, it actually makes that feel like simply a bump in the road to this commitment you've made, as opposed to when it feels like something that you're not truly committed to. All of those become excuses to quit, right? Or excuses to say, you know what, this happened. It's a sign that I'm not meant to do this. And that's not a sign, right? No. It's not, but that's what people kind of tell themselves. So
amazing advice. Yes. So thank you so much for coming on today. This was absolutely amazing. I could just tell by some of the live comments coming in that people's eyes are being opened. They're like, oh my gosh, I can actually do this.
Yay!
Yay! So where can people find more or learn more about you, find out about some of your services, if you have any freemium stuff that you want to share with people as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of ways. I mean, I think that we kind of put ourselves out there, right? Like I'm out there for the world to see. So, you can check us out on Facebook at Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. You can find our website, which is fiscalfitnessaz.com. We are on Stitcher and iTunes under the Saver and the Spender podcast. So that's my husband and I. We've got, on the website, there's tutorials and articles and strategies. And I mean, take a look. And if somebody needs something, please reach out to me, message us on Facebook or email me. We do workshops here out of our office in Mesa. So feel free to come to a workshop if you want it. Or like you were saying, I do one-on-one consulting. So if a client, doesn't like the idea of a group setting, I do keep the groups very small. So there's usually 15 people or less. Then, meet with me one-on-one. I can help you decipher everything and really just tackle the emotional part of taking this leap, which I think is the biggest part. Once you schedule that session, it's sort of like do or die from there, right? Yeah. Like I'm going to kind of be your cheerleader from there. So that's probably the other option.
Awesome. And I'm going to link all of this up in the show notes. And if you're watching on live, I'll leave this information below as well for you guys to go and check it out. Kelsa also does a lot of great live videos on her Facebook page. So that's Fiscal Fitness Phoenix, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So guys, go over there and check it out. She gives out so much amazing free content. So you can go over there and listen to some of her videos, check out some of her content. And yeah, thank you guys so much for jumping on. Kelsa, thank you for being on today. Guys, go check out her podcast. It is the bomb. Lots of amazing tips. No doubt that with the information that she provides and puts out there, that you can start really feeling confident and less stressed about your money situation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.